Hi, everyone. I am very excited for this episode, mostly because it is probably one of the most commonly asked questions to me when I talk about intuitive development, intuition, and empaths. The question is, what about my child? What if my child is intuitive? How do I parent my intuitive child? Or how do I support my empathic child who has heightened sensitivities? Here we are. We are at the Parenting an Intuitive Child or Reparenting Your Inner Child episode here in the Wendy De Rosa sessions. So, the information I'm going to be talking about in this session, as this title sort of implies, which is that there's information that pertains to how we might support our children who are sensitive and intuitive, how we raise them, how do we work with them, how do we support them. And some of that information might actually be pertinent to you in your own inner child. And that might include the connection, the validation, the parenting you might have needed. Your little inner child, we all have an inner child within us that might have needed that at a really young age. Maybe we didn't get it, not because it was anyone's fault necessarily, but because consciousness was the way it was at the time, society, structure, parenting, etc., was the way it was at the time. And not many people were talking about how to raise your intuitive child. So, a lot of this information might actually be relatable to you as you're listening. I will also say that I'm not an expert in psychology. I'm not an expert in parenting by way of education in it and development in education. I am a parent. I have a sensitive intuitive child. Most children are sensitive and intuitive. And my expertise is more in the energetic system and in understanding the developmental stages of our self by in the way of our energetic bodies, how that relates to our spiritual growth, our intuitive development, and our healing, our growth and our healing on that energetic level. So that's my area. And obviously I train in I train healers in intuition, and in developing intuition is more my arena. That being said, as children, when we're young, and our little ones who are young, it really starts then. I mean, really, our intuitive development is really starting very early on in life, and how we uh, relate to ourselves, how we're received in the world, how we're perceived as normal, how we belong, how it's acceptable or relatable, all depends on our social construct and how we are supported in our intuition and our development. So I'm glad you're here because there's a lot to say about our intuitive children. My advice, I'm going to talk it through, and then my advice is to really listen, take in what might be relevant to you in your childhood and see if this supports you or speaks to you or who you are. So, first of all, what's really interesting is that in consciousness development, we're in eras of time where consciousness continues to evolve, and that sometimes occurs generationally. Each generation comes in with a new wave of consciousness, and we continue to evolve in our generations. You'll see that just from your generation and the one prior and the one after, how we operate differently, how we survive differently, what's going on in the world, etc. So, as a child comes into the world, they're born into a particular generation and an era of consciousness, and they come in and they are going to be our new wave of education, of understanding of how we're operating in the world, how we're evolving, what technology we're going to be using, how we're going to form our constructs. And they're also living through pandemics, and they're living through eras of what we might call collective experiences. And sometimes that's trauma on the collective level. And their little systems are adapting or growing up in these eras of time that they will, at some point in their adult life, they will be they'll be part of the change. They'll be part of the growth and evolution of our planet. And so that means that these children are coming in with consciousness that sometimes is here to teach us. We know our construct of what is normal and okay. And then these little beings come in and they rock every system that was normal to us. And then we put into question what is normal, what is right, what is okay. Sometimes children are brought into this world, raised and, born into this world with um they're born into this world with what psychology is calling disorders, whether it's autism or neurodivergent or neurodiverse or whatever these different disorders are, heightened sensitivity, highly sensitive, maybe on the spectrum of something of some sort on that developmental, neurological developmental stage. Maybe there's ADD, ADHD. And really, we're talking about heightened sensitivity in the body. And these children oftentimes were trying to figure out on this clinical level, on sometimes the educational system level, how to work with children whose brains operate differently than maybe someone else on a different spectrum that was classified as normal. Um, and what I'd say here is that there are more children being raised and coming into this world with heightened sensitivity um highly developed in their, what I'm going to say, their upper chakras. I'll get into that shortly. They are here to teach us, and they're here to kind of rock our system a little bit and dismantle where we might be programmed or conditioned to know what is safe, secure, sense of belonging. They're here to shake us up a little bit and teach us a new way. And they're part of a newer evolution. And they are um, helping us learn as we are watching the unfoldment, as we are part of that unfolding of how to support and parent highly sensitive children. So I'm a chakra person, and by way of the energy system, not just chakras, but I base a lot of understanding around intuition on the chakras. And so I'm going to say a few things about the chakras as they relate to intuition and to children growing up. So we have these 7 embodied chakras along the length of the spine. The lower chakras, which I would consider the first at the tailbone, the second in the pelvis, and the third in the solar plexus region, are what I call the lower body intuitives, people who are um, more of a grounded, more emotional, more deep feeling children. They're more the empathic children. We have the upper half of our chakra system, which is the heart, which is the heart. It can be a bridge. It is a bridge between the lower body and the upper body. But sometimes the heart relates to upper chakra intuition. We also have the throat chakra, the sixth chakra, also known as the third eye center, and the crown chakra. This is upper body. This relates to upper body intuition. Eventually, we call this more the psychic, the medium, the ability to connect more to the spiritual realm or spiritual understanding. Whereas lower body intuition is more about emotions and feeling emotional energy and being sensitive to the emotional temperature of people and of humanity. Upper body intuitives, little more sensitive to the environment by way of sounds and harsh sounds, or sometimes a lot of influence or energy coming in on that psychic level, feeling overwhelmed, bombarded by noises or sounds or talking or chemicals or things like that, a little more upper body intuitives. So sometimes, and this is true for us just like it would be for a child, we come into this world with a predisposition to one or the other or both. We might come in really strong in our lower body intuition. We are deep feeling people. And that can be children who are deep feel you know this by recognizing my child is a deep feeler. They feel things, they're emotional, they want to give hugs. If they're feeling sad, they might cry. If someone else is expressing grief or sadness, they might have angry outbursts. If there's, disruption or arguments or um a lot of angry energy around them. They might be responsive. They might be water signs. If you follow astrology, not all, but many water sign children, the Cancers, the Pisces, the Scorpios, they might be watery in their birth chart on the astrological level. I am someone who, when my daughter was born, I had her astrological natal chart read because I was curious, who is my child on this spirit level coming into this world? And I really believe in the influence of astrology on us and our healing process and on our life path. And so I often turn to astrology for extra information to help me understand myself, but in this case, to help me understand my daughter. So they might have some water in their chart. That's a good indication. Are they more spiritually empathic in that way? They feel, they're the deep feelers. They might be more emotional. They might actually be more claircognizant, which is the feeling, it's the kinesthetic experience of intuition. People who are claircognizant are very kinesthetic. They're physical. They have to move their bodies. They have a knowing sense. They know because they know. They don't know why they know, they just know. And sometimes they need to move their body, or sometimes they get the chills, or they get body sensations, or shivers, or something happens through the body, stomach aches sometimes. Sometimes they get headaches. Those might be a little more the claircognizant, empathic children. Not to say headaches 100% of the time are lower body intuition, but even for us as adults, there's lots of reasons why headaches happen. And by all means, that please take this as take well-rounded answers here, meaning there's diet, there's neurological, there's physical, but there's energetic. And I can only speak to the energetic, which is that sometimes headaches are caused from too much energy coming in to the solar plexus region of the body. And it's a vulnerability in that area, disrupting digestion. And so lower body intuitives, which includes children, sometimes will get migraines or headaches from too much energy coming through their gut, through the solar plexus region. Is that 100% of the time why a migraine or a headache would happen? Absolutely not. But it's a factor. It's a piece of the puzzle. So children who are many ways very physical can be lower body intuitives and deep feelers. So these are more the empathic child. And upper body intuitive children who come into this world might be fast thinkers. They might be mental geniuses, meaning like very intellectual, kind of a um, heightened processing of visions, of ideas, of concepts, very bright intellectually. They could be at an astrological level more air or fire in their chart. might be worth, again, going back to that astrological component of seeing, getting a natal chart read to see, is my child fiery and they have a lot of air? They might be prone to more upper body intuitives. They also might be sensitive to chemicals or the environment or to energy in the environment, by way of, less on the emotional level, more on that, and I want to say, keep saying environmental level. That might mean noises. That might also mean the energy of different types of chemical sensitivities, ranging from, um, a laundry detergent to, um, being outside in an environment where pesticides are sprayed. Those might be a little more upper body intuitives. They also might be dreamers and they might be visionaries. They see, they create beautiful artwork because the visions come. They are upper body intuitives. And eventually, what that evolves into is heightened clairvoyance and sometimes heightened clairaudience. They might be leaders, they might be speakers, they might be singers, they might be artists of some sort. They might be able to build systems and architecture, design things, be architects of actual architects or architects of their life. These are some qualities of the upper body intuitives. Eventually, as children grow and develop, that this turns into heightened, what I might call mystical connection to the spirit realm, spirit guides and angels. Some upper body intuitive children might actually see spirits and ghosts and imaginary friends and fairies and different mystical experiences that they might have. And for a parent that's witnessing, my child is saying they're seeing something and they're scared of something in the house. One of the things I would advise, and so here I'm going to talk a little bit, since I'm moving on this trajectory, I'm going to talk about how to really parent the upper body intuitive child and how to support and parent the lower body intuitive child. And it's not defined by children are upper or lower. It's defined by our clairs. We come into this world with strong upper and or lower or both. So your child might have both of these going on, might have upper and lower. And sometimes it's just what's the activity or the behavior that you're witnessing that's going to need a particular type of tool to work with or connection to work with. So for upper body intuitives, if your child is um, mentally very stimulated and very ingenious and needs consistent, well, intellectual stimulation, they like to talk, they like to process verbally, they like to share a lot. They are, I don't know, maybe they have heightened intellect in math or in science or facts or reason, and they're really processing on that mental level. Intellectual stimulation is important for them, that they're reading, that they're given either games or board games or different types of ways for them to process and to utilize that deductive reasoning, that frontal lobe processing, that sense of letting their intellect be stimulated and to get it down onto the ground. Meaning upper body intuitives, our work, and I'm one too. I have both, so I'm going to speak to my own. When my upper clairs are active, I have to work on grounding. Some ways that we ground are getting things down onto paper, or getting things down onto the earth, or getting things out of our head and out of our mouths and down into concrete, tangible experiences. So for children, that might mean getting them outside to play, get their hands in the dirt. That might mean have them writing, literally physically handwriting, hand holding pencil to paper, color drawing art. Those might be experiences of expression that get the upper body heightened experience down into the grounding, the ground component. And this is important as we develop because upper body intuitives have a tendency to grow in their upper body and their intellect and disconnect further from their lower chakras, from their lower body. So, as parents, we want to be able to support them in getting down into their lower chakras. That might mean getting on the ground with them. That might mean sitting down and getting on their level. That might mean naming emotions that they're experiencing. That might mean lots of hugs, getting them connected to their body. It might mean encouraging physical activity and connection with nature. If they're scared, they're seeing things, they don't know what, they're having an intuitive experience. And I have had parents say to me, my child just said that uh, their grandma, my mother, just came to them in their dream. And it blew my mind, the message that my child just gave me. And do these things happen? They happen. They happen. You might have a very highly intuitive child who needs us as the parents to normalize the experience they're having so that they aren't scared of it. And so sometimes, and it's interesting just to add this in, we live, I'm in the United States currently, and I am American by way of being born here. But we're a culture here in the United States that doesn't integrate spiritual life, or I should say, excuse me, doesn't integrate the afterlife or spirits that have crossed over in the way that some other cultures do. We don't normalize it. We have a fear of the intangible. And so for that's a cultural thing. If we are Americans, and I say Americans, but it's Western. It's you figure it out sometime in your culture, whatever culture, if that resonates for you. But my point here is that we we as a parents are learning to normalize that, gosh, we're spirits in a body, and when spirits cross over into the light, they're no longer in the body, but they're still a spirit, and they might have messages, and there might be a connection still in place. And wow, we can actually receive those messages. And when our children rock our worlds by delivering piece of information or something like that, it's a good teaching lesson for us to say, how do I ask them more? Tell me more about that. How was that for you? Without being shocked by it or showing them fear or, devaluing it or being scared of it to the point of telling them never to do that again. That's what causes our children to shut down. And shutting down of a gift on an intuitive level inside our body is a it's a lifelong healing process to open it or to connect. It's not that we necessarily need to open it back up, but we naturally come into this world as a soul in a body that has the capacity to communicate through our clairs, through our consciousness. But that's normal, but we're not taught it's normal. And so when we shut a part of us down, we fragment ourselves. We lose access to our own power as adults. We become stuffed. We become depressed. We basically shut a part of ourselves down. Parenting intuitive children is actually, and I would say this is probably parenting on many levels, but certainly in this case, we're talking about intuitive children. It is about being curious about their experience. Oh, tell me more about that. That's so interesting. Would you like to draw a picture of it? Would you like to, um, would you like to say more about that? And if they don't, they don't. But but normalizing it for them and asking if they want to share more takes it out of takes it gives you the opportunity as the parent to not have a response that might invalidate their experience and therefore have them shut down their intuition. Okay, still with upper body intuitives here, I'm going to say something about the experience of when a child on upper body intuitive level says things like, "Mom, I'm scared. I had a bad dream. There was a monster." So, my recommendation is twofold. One is that we don't say things like, "Honey, there are no monsters in your closet. Honey, that's fake. Just don't even there's that doesn't even it's not doesn't exist. It's not real. What monsters? What are you talking about?" We don't invalidate their experience. We do the opposite. "Oh, wow, that is so interesting." And because of course age depends on the age here, but honey, that is so interesting. Wow, there was a monster in your class. What would you like to do? What should we do about this monster? Well, then maybe the child says, "Well, I wanna punch it," or I wanna get a sword and put light all the way around it and put it in a bubble and get it away," or, "I wanna call in a superhero to help take a net and take that monster out." Whatever the scenario makes sense on an imaginary level for the inner child, teaches the inner child how to overcome, how to not stay stuck in fear, but how to dissolve or how to be empowered to be able to resource themselves and manage or in some cases conquer fear when it's present in their lives. So not so what I do with my daughter is I say, she'll say to me, "Mom, I had a really bad dream." And I said, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." And she might describe her dream to me, and it feels somewhat like she's processing something in her sleep. And I might say, "Honey, what do you want to do about the dream? What should we do?" She'll say, "Mom," and I do this with her often. I said, "Honey, should we put the dream in a bubble and send it out?" And she'll say, "Yes, let's put it in a bubble and send it way, 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 way out of us, out of you, way out of you, honey, to the edge of the earth, to infinite light. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to pop it? Do you want to blow it up? Do you want to dissolve it? Do you want to give it to an angel?" And then she'll tell me what she wants to do with it. And then she lets it go. And then we let it go. And it gives her a tool to be able to let whatever it is that she felt disempowered by to have a sense of empowerment over it by creating a visualization. So, my recommendation to you is imagine with them. If they are saying, "I see a spirit," whether or not that is an actual spirit or the child's perception of anything, get on their level and say, "Oh, okay, okay. What should we do about that?" And let the child even help guide. Like, and if the child is scared, say, "Okay, can I step in? What should we do? Let me step in and I will be your protector. And I'm going to put light around this, or I'm going to put it in a bubble, and I'm going to say no," or whatever needs to happen. The child either does or you assist as a protector, but we get on their level instead of again making them wrong for or invalidating them and telling them that what they're seeing or sensing isn't true. It's true for them in that moment, and so we've got to play with it, work with it, act as if it's happening and it's real. And our work is to give them the tools on how to clear the energy. Very simple tools. What would you want to do? What would you imagine? I would imagine a superhero comes in. Superman comes in, Supergirl, super person comes in, swoops it away, pulls it out, gone, takes it, whatever it is, let there be a sense of empowerment and accomplishment. If the child says, "No, I have an imaginary friend and I talked to this imaginary friend," ask about it. see if, and there's some gray area here because we want to make sure in some cases, if it seems like it's going to an extreme, then you might want to make sure you're getting some outside, child psychology support. But in some cases, you can literally ask your child about it. Is there, sometimes our imaginary friends go away they're there for a developmental state of time and they go away over some time. If there's a concern that feels above and beyond what I'm sharing in this podcast, make sure, please, that you're getting that support and seeking that professional support out. But sometimes just asking the child or making space for the child to share about it can be really, really helpful. Upper body intuitive children are daydreamers. Again, they're intellectual. What I would say is to be careful of um, too much screens with upper body intuitive children in developmental stages as they're growing, because in some ways I get it. We cannot avoid this. I'm a parent. I understand the screens are like the nemesis sometimes, but sometimes with upper body intuitives, we can really get lost in the fantasy or in the struggle between what is reality and what is non-reality. So we can upper body intuitive children can over identify with what is non-reality versus what's reality. So again, this is about perhaps limiting screens or limiting what they're watching on screens or using screens in a more of an educational way, finding your way around that. Um, that's a whole conversation in itself, but I'll just name that amount. The other part of this is that to counter that and getting into reality, quote unquote, which in itself is a loaded word. But what I mean by it is transferring from the upper mind disconnect from the body to getting into the body. So we do that by getting outside, getting into nature. You might need to go out into nature with your child. You might need to not, go out, why go outside and play? The parent might need to go out too and do it yourself. And as you're doing it, you're modeling it for your child. You're also perhaps going with them, or just again increasing more opportunities for children to be immersed in nature, because that really helps the sentient body go from excessive upper chakra to come down and integrate into the lower chakras, which in itself is grounding. And children who learn how to balance upper chakras with lower chakras over time can be can develop more sense of self, and to be able to counterbalance some of these, their gift. Their gift is ultimately upper body intuition, but we need to learn how to counterbalance it, and learning that early on in life by integrating into nature or physical connections with people in the world, um, getting them out of their head a little bit more, to counter, and not all the time, but to counterbalance, is really, really helpful for upper body intuitives. Okay, so how might we support the lower body intuitives? So I think I named a few things. One, the lower body intuitives are a little more of the empathic and claircognizant children. They are the very kinesthetic. They are the emotional deep feelers. They might be emotional. They might cry a little more or express their emotions big through their bodies, angry outbursts. They want to give hugs. They want to be close. They might need physical connection for regulation, for co-regulation. They might need more co-regulation. Sometimes an upper body intuitive might be a little more independent. Not always. It's not always this black and white, but it could be. Lower body intuitives just like to have more co-regulation with friends, with people, with maybe the parent. Again, they might be more watery in their nature, more water signs, more earth in them. They might like food. Um, and they just might be a little bit more physical through their body. So, lower body intuitives, the deep feeling kids, they are our teachers of emotions. They are here to teach you as the adult how to regulate our emotions, how to heal our emotions, how to be in a human experience with emotions. And they teach us by being who they are. And so the lower body intuitives, if we were raised as children to disconnect from our emotions by getting the information like children are meant to be seen, not heard, or go to your room if you're angry, or anything, shame if you're sad, shame if you're showing any emotions, or we just don't talk about emotions in this house. If you got any of that as a child, most likely learning how to connect with your own emotions and giving yourself capacity and permission to be with emotions is what your child is teaching you. So in this case, your work becomes how do we hold space for our child to be in their emotional experience without blaming, shaming, wronging them, punishing them? How do we validate their emotions and give them permission to feel their feelings? And also, how are we giving them language around their emotions? This is part of building emotional intelligence in a child. How are we naming the feeling or talking about what might be underneath the feeling? Um, I'll give you an example. My daughter said to me, "Mom, I really hate my handwriting." She brought over a piece of paper with a pen. She wanted me to write a list of things that she could pick up at a store. And she said, and I was working, and she's sitting in my office. She comes to sit in my office and she's getting really upset on the sofa in my office. And I'm sitting here, I had things to do. And she comes over and she said, "Mom, I hate my handwriting and I really like your handwriting so much better than my handwriting. Could you please write me a list of the things? You do it so much better than I do." And I'm sitting here watching her beat up on herself for her handwriting. And I said, "Honey, you have beautiful handwriting. I love your handwriting. And do you just need attention right now?" And she said, "Yes, Mom, I just need attention." I said, "Okay. You need me to sit here and do this with you, and you need that attention in this moment." We needed to fill her bucket with attention in that moment. It wasn't about her, self-deprecating, bad handwriting, blaming, shaming. She was going there in her behavior, but the deeper piece was she just needed me to spend 5 minutes with her and give her attention. And that's what we did. And so there's an emotional need at that moment. And sometimes our children will act out of that emotional need with something else, with some other behavior, some way in that moment she's saying, "I'm bad and wrong because mom's not paying attention to me." When in fact, if I, as the adult, would say, "Oh, you're bad and wronging yourself because mom's not paying attention to you. I get it. Let's sit here and let me give you some attention." And then her cup is filled. She doesn't feel bad and wrong. She got what she needed on that deeper level. Lower body intuitives oftentimes will have a need and are an emotional need. Our work as parents of emotionally intuitive, empathically intuitive children is to be in tuned with what the emotional need is under the behavior. That's our work. It's not we were raised being punished in the behavior because that's what society taught. But here is we're reparenting ourselves and our children. If we're parenting our intuitive children, the shift is how do I look under the behavior and see what my deep feeling child, my deeply emotional and empathic child needs in this moment. And what's interesting about this, and this is where we go to our own reparenting, is that most of the time, if you relate to being intuitive, empathic, honestly, just a human being, most of the time, you have an emotional need too that your inner child is needing, and either the child or the adult is acting out a behavior. So sometimes it's a matter of tuning into ourselves and saying, what am I needing in this moment? What am I needing in this moment that I'm behaving in this way, acting out in this way, neglecting myself in this way? Just notice that for yourself, because that oftentimes we will get ourselves caught in boundary issues with others as adults because there is a way in which we are not tending and paying attention to our own inner child. By us asking our inner child, by us asking our children, our intuitive empathic children, what do you need? Or I think I get what you need. Is it that you're needing attention? Do you need a hug? Do you need love right now? Do you need space? Do you need to think? And even when they're in the worst in their behavior, if we stay in connection with them, it's teaching them to tune into their deeper need, that they can express their deeper need. That is empathic training. That is teaching a child how to be in touch with themselves so that they don't move into codependent bonding and connection with the world in a way that overrides their needs and prioritizes other people's energy and other people's emotions. When children have been made bad, wrong, and shamed, so let me be clear in my language here. When children have been shamed, which means bad and wronged, they disconnect from their own feelings, their own truth, their own needs. We did as children. And when we've experienced shame at that level and we've been made bad and wrong, we're going to do the behavior that's going to get the approval. So for intuitive children in the sensitive, empathic level, what is going to help your child is that we validate the emotion and give permission for them to feel how they feel. It's that we get to the need underneath the behavior and speak to it. I think I know what you need. I think I can have a sense. Maybe I'm wrong, but let me ask you that we connect to the need. And that what this does is create the grounding and stable emotional environment for your child. And it gives you permission to tune into your own emotional needs that are met or unmet by you. Listen to your child's, excuse me, I was going to say your inner child's guidance. Absolutely, 100%. Listen to your inner child's guidance. Also, listen to your child's guidance. Listen to their wisdom. This is another way that we parent our intuitive children. Listen to them. What's their guidance? What are they telling you? Give them, the just space to be able to say what they sense and they feel, and without having to fix anything, just hearing it. Wow, that's so interesting. Tell me more about that. Also, give your child permission to have visualizations. Their imagination, we call it in children. That's imagination is early clairvoyance. The more when we go through school and we're in frontal lobe cortex and brain development, our brain changes in a way where we stop imagining and we have more training in the brain of reason. And that eventually we have to relearn how to tune in to clairvoyance. And sometimes that's just natural, it's just a natural progression, but it can be helpful to encourage yourself, certainly as an adult, and your inner child and your your child, your real child in your life, to continue to visualize. Imagine what that might feel like. Imagine what winning is going to feel like in your body. Let's try and, we've got a big race tomorrow, or we have this presentation at school to do tomorrow. Let's imagine. Let's take a few minutes and imagine what it could feel like to really do the best you can do in that experience. So, encouraging the visualizations. This next point I want to make in supporting whether you have a lower body intuitive or upper body intuitive dominant child in their intuition, dominant in their intuition, or both, is that when teenagers in particular, and at some point I'm going to create a podcast relatively soon just for teenagers, because they're processing a lot. They're processing a lot. And there's a high expectation for what teenagers are having to do and meet in their life socially, in their bodies, when there's the changes that are happening in their bodies, plus, learning, following the systems of education, everything that they're having to process so much, plus just how to be accepted. It's just so much. But in this podcast, what I'd say is teenagers need to know they're not crazy, and they need to know what intuition is, and that it's a natural sense that they have. They've been born with it, and they've been taught to use the rules, to follow the rules. But inevitably, there is a part of them that is going to need attention and that might be speaking to them. So helping them understand that they have intuition. There's a part of them, and I say it to my child, even at her age. I'll even say, honey, listen to your heart. Listen to I don't always use, she's young, so I don't always use the word intuition. Sometimes I have, every once in a while I do. But I say, listen to your heart, listen to your body. What is your body telling you? What is your heart telling you? Honey, no matter what, I always encourage you to listen to your heart. No matter what anyone else is doing out there, I give her those messages. She's young, she's 7 currently at this time. But I've said that for a long time. But for teenagers, it's really the similar messaging. I know it's so scary to defy what everybody else is doing, to think differently, to individuate, to not feel accepted. But I want to remind you, you have a truth, you have a wisdom, you have a path, you have a soul, and that part of you has something to say. And that part of you is going to continue to guide you no matter what anybody else says. So you have to tune to that, nurture it, listen to it, breathe into it, and find your language around this. I know when my child turns a teenager, she's going to roll her eyes anytime I bring anything up like this. And I expect that because I, as a parent, have to make room for healthy rebellion. I have to expect that my child is going to rebel. And that is a form of her development, of our child's development. There's, in the chakra system, solar plexus developing years, it's 12 to 17, give or take, 11 maybe to 18. Those are solar plexus developing years. And those are the years where they have to individuate and establish their identity. In order to do that, they are going to need to rebel from what's expected of them. And sometimes that's going to be rebelling from mom and dad. So as long as I know that and I'm making space for that, we'll check back. We'll check back in 5, 6, 7, 8 years here, and I'll let you know. I'll update you with how that's going. But the expectation is it's there. There has to be some level of healthy rebellion and permission for her to do that. And I say healthy because obviously there's unhealthy ways that we can rebel, hurting ourselves or hurting others, or ways that might be detrimental to self. But how can I, as a parent, how can we as parents create that individuation, healthy rebellion, critical thinking, feeling for themselves, following their own intuition, trusting themselves. How do we create that? If not at, the age of 5 or 10, what about 15? How can we continue to create that for our teenagers? There's so much more to say about teenagers in particular. And really, more than anything, it's about speaking to them and trusting them and the call from within that they are here on this planet and their mission on this earth that is just, it's not going to look like our generation. It's going to look like their generation. So what can they get excited about? It's, I think when we're, in many ways, our teenagers currently have been raised in eras of time when there have been mass shootings at schools. There have been, we've had pandemics. They've been masked. They've had to leave school. They've been home. They've lived through a lot, and they will in these next coming years. They'll be processing so much. So how can we support them in healing, and on that nervous system level, on the therapeutic level, I say on the trauma level in the body, everything that they've been living through and processing in this collective environment and world. Plus, how can we allow them to connect to their soul and their deeper truth and their deeper wisdom? And sometimes one conversation or one nudge isn't enough. We have to hold permission. Language like, I trust you. I know you'll figure it out. Or sometimes I listen. Sometimes when I don't know, I have to close my eyes and tune in and listen to that inner voice. Or I have to do the first step, the first right step, even if I don't know the end game or the final picture. I just have to trust the first step I can make. Different pieces of language that gives them permission to tune into themselves and trust themselves opens up a whole world of permission for them as teenagers. There's so much to say here further on teenagers. I'll keep going on this one, but in terms of your young child, again, keep in mind that your child might be either the lower body intuitive, the upper body intuitive, or both. And sometimes we as parents have to navigate, is my child, in their lower body intuition right now? Are they empathically deep feeling? What do they need? Are they in their upper body intuitive nature right now? They're so stimulated and they're going and going, and it feels like they need to get grounded. How can I support them in this moment and getting grounded in their bodies more so? So we're continuously tending to the differentiation between upper and lower body intuitives in our children and meeting those needs and guiding that process based on their gifts and their skills. At some point, maybe I'll evolve. I can't make huge promises, but this has been something I've been wanting to do for a long time, which is, develop some type of book or article or course or something on this subject to go deeper. But hopefully this amount of information has been helpful. I really hope it has. And I continue to keep putting out there what I think could be helpful. And as I'm receiving feedback sometimes on my social channels, it helps me with what I might create next and offer you here on the podcast. So feel free to offer any feedback. And on my Instagram is a great place to do it when we post this, or Facebook is also a great place to do it. And we'll keep going. So may this support you in your growth as an adult. May it support your inner child. May it support your children. And I send you many blessings and love. And I pray that this information give you what you need to take the next step. Many blessings, and I'll see you soon.